Salam sejahtera diucapkan kepada Yang Berhormat Tuan Chang Lee Kang, Menteri Sains, Teknologi dan Inovasi, Dr. Adik Vincent Tung bin Abdullah, Pengerusi Perak Akademi, Dr. Francis Ng, pengarang buku yang bertajuk A Guide for Independent Minded Scientists, Professor W.K. Fletcher, who is the Fellow of the Perak Academy, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan. Perak Academy ingin mengerakamkan jutaan terima kasih atas kehadiran yang berhormat ke pelancaran buku ini. Terima kasih juga kepada para hadirin yang turut menyerikan majlis pada petang ini. And on behalf of the Perak Academy, we would like to thank and welcome everyone to this book launch. To start off today's event, we would like to invite Mr. Chang Kok Kyok, who is the Deputy Chairman of the Perak Academy, to give the welcome address. Mr. Chang.
Thank you, Robin. Although the Chairman is here of the Perak Academy, thank you, Robin, for reminding me that I'm the Deputy Chairman. In my home or my house, I don't need any reminder that I am the Deputy Chairman. My Chairman is here. The Honourable Minister, Mr. Chang Lee Kang, Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation. Our distinguished author, Dr. Francis Ng, author of the book Guide to Independent-Minded Scientists. Fellow of the Academy, Dr. Fletcher, representative from FRIM, Noseha, Ms. Amy, representing Mr. Peter Chan, our host, governors and friends of the Perak Academy, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is fitting that we have in our presence this afternoon the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, because it has always been the avowed mission of the Perak Academy to encourage research, discussion and learning. While it must be a change for you as Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation to now switch your attention to science and innovation, because previous to that you have been calling for reformasi. Can I perhaps suggest that now your new mantra is research and innovation, research and innovation, research and innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, by way of introduction, the Minister was a student activist in his days while studying in university. He is an old boy of Samtec, a leading school in Ipoh, and I believe that many of his teachers are in the audience today. Lest I be guilty of ingratitude, I take this opportunity to thank Lee Kang for giving his time to officiate this launch, and we look forward to his views on the development of science in our country. Vision 2020, the year 2020 has come and gone. It is a dismal failure because we have not achieved a developed nation status. And so we'll be interested to hear the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation what he has in mind for our new Malaysia Madani. And I thank you also, Minister, for the friendship which has gone back to 2008 when we had our jaramas and functions before our Minister, the Chief Nizam, was dismissed. Thank you for coming to officiate this function today, to launch a book by whom I consider to be a great Malaysian scientist, Dr. Francis Ng. Dr. Francis has authored many books, but today, the Perak Academy and the Minister, Mr. Chang Lee Kang, honors and recognizes Dr. Francis Ng for his invaluable contributions science in Malaysia. Sorry, a bit difficult to read. Like me, Francis, we were in St. Michael's, although at a different time, and we were both taught by the great Brother Vincent. I'm sure many of you know Brother Vincent. Francis has shared with me that it was very much because of Brother Vincent who inspired him to become a scientist. Francis, living in Kampong Sini, he won a scholarship, a Colombo Plan scholarship, to study botany in the University of Tasmania. Upon returning to Malaysia, he worked with Frim, and whilst there, he also took leave to obtain his DPhil, doctorate in philosophy, PhD in Oxford is known as a DPhil. So that I consider to be a great achievement. After retirement from Frim, he worked in the United Nations in the Food and Agriculture Organization. If anybody here bothers to scrutinize Dr. Francis Ng's career and achievements, I'm sure you will agree with me that the Malaysian government, or we, to use an expression, are looking at a gift horse in the mouth. We do not treasure him enough. I would say, in the 3 words, that Dr. Francis Ng has overachieved and is under-recognized. And we have another great scientist here today, Dr. Kay Fletcher, Fellow of the Academy. And he will give us an appreciation of the book Guide to Independent-Minded Scientists. Kay Fletcher, who is completely devoted to science and nature. He has photographed tigers and the Cerro deer, which can be found only in our limestone hills. Dr. Fletcher and his wife, who I've befriended over the years, they live in Canning Garden. But maybe seeing the beautiful setting here in Haven, maybe Dr. Fletcher may be persuaded to move to the Haven from the Canning Garden. I'd like to thank Amy on behalf of Peter for the gracious hospitality to be the host in this beautiful setting, the Haven. I consider this an Eden. It is very wonderfully managed by Mr. Peter Chan, and I want to thank them and give them a round of appreciation for hosting this seminar. With these words, I would like to hand you back to Robin for the rest of the program. I wish you all a very warm welcome, and I thank once again our Minister, Mr. Chandika, for his distinguished presence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chan, for the welcome address. I think next we want to hear from the author himself. So shall we warmly welcome Dr. Francis Ng to give an overview of the book.
Honorable Yang Berhormat Minister for Science, Technology and Innovation, Mr. Chandri Khan, Chairman, Deputy Chairman, Fellows of the Academy, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very honored by the presence of the Honorable Minister today. Your portfolio, Science, Technology and Innovation, very important one to my mind. It's very interesting that all the research institutes in Malaysia come under ministries, not under you. Unfortunately or fortunately. Because now you can act above all the others, because you're not tied to any particular one of them. My book is a guide to independent-minded scientists, because at the end of the day, all scientific progress is due to individuals. Individual scientists. Every single advancement in science was due to an individual. Not to the government, not to any organizations. And if we don't have those individuals, then no matter what we do, we're not going to make any progress. So we have to work at the individual level to find out how we can raise the level of achievement. Now, I worked in film for 26 years and eventually became the Deputy Director General. I spent my 26 years as a scientist, as a manager of scientists. And then when I went to the United Nations in FAO, I was head of the unit for forestry research and education, trying to improve the level of research in developing countries. It was a hopeless task. I found that the developing countries were not ready for it somehow. All they were interested in was handouts from the FAO. And as soon as the project finance ends, everything is finished. The scientists who are there have no drive to carry on. So I gave up, came back. I've been an independent consultant, but I also spent a lot of time editing scientific papers. So I edit papers for the Journal of Tropical Forest Science, which is published by FRIM. In the world standards of literature, we are a level 2 publication, not number 1. The first level are Western publications. We cannot get to the number 1 level. But at that level, I get to review papers from all over tropical Asia, Africa, and Latin America. So I'm familiar with the way science is developing in African countries, in Asia, and in Latin America. We're all trying to catch up with the West. But up to today, we cannot. The top journals are published in the West, the top scientists are all in the West. Why can we not raise our capabilities? I don't believe that it's a matter of brain power. There's something else. There's some deep cultural problems that we all have. Now, so I have analyzed this, and it is for I'm bringing up today in this book. There are 3 matters of great concern to us. One is the understanding of what is scientific knowledge. And I think most people don't realize what it is. We are taught science as a body of facts. That is a big mistake. Science is a body of ideas. Ideas are debatable, changeable, improvable. The science of yesterday becomes obsolete. The science of tomorrow will be different. Our science today will become obsolete in 20 years' time. I have thrown away all my textbooks from my university days because they're no longer relevant. I don't even want to give it away because if people read those books, they'll get the wrong ideas. And when you have the wrong idea, the right idea cannot go in. Rather than to start fresh. So our scientists don't really understand that the job of a scientist is to improve knowledge, and we improve knowledge by improving theory. Ideas in science are called theories. Now, to the popular people, when you have theories, you're kind of madman, you know. But science theory is very, very important, and if you're not a theoretician, you're a second-rate scientist. So let me explain to you how science began. And people are not taught this. Science began 400 years ago. It was an innovative way of doing things. And the first scientist was an Italian, Galileo Galilei. And he invented, although he didn't, he invented what we would now call the method of science. And I want to describe to you what this method is, because it's the same method that we use today. Galileo was a 19-year-old boy when he invented this new way of making knowledge. He was a very religious boy. He went to church. And when he was in church, he was fascinated by the lights hanging from the ceiling. They're not fixed like that. They were long strings in the light. And you had to pull them to one side, and somebody would climb a ladder and light the lamp. And then they slowly let go, and then the lamp would swing, you know. And we're looking at these lamps. And he wondered, this is a regular pattern. Do they keep time? Is this swing making exactly the same time up and down? Now, how is he going to time this? With his heartbeat pulse. And he found that each swing takes the same number of heartbeats. So he said, so it keeps time. So now he has got all his data, what we call scientists call data. He collected data, he made observations, he collected data, and he analyzed it and says the time is constant. Now, if he had written a paper, that would be called a data paper. That is the level of most of the science that we do nowadays in the developing countries. That is not yet science. The next stage is very important, the making of theory. Now, Galileo didn't stop there. He went on to say, what happens if I change the length of that, and this thing is called a pendulum, if I shorten or lengthen it, will the time change? If I add a bigger weight, will the time change? And so he did his experiments at home, presumably, because he was 19 years old. And he found that the time would change according to the length of the pendulum and the weight you attach to it. And then he made this big change in thinking. He came out and said, all pendulums, regardless of the weight, regardless of the length, regardless of where you are in the world, will keep time. That was the first scientific theory ever made. A scientific theory is a universal statement based on experiments that we do in a particular place. But you have made a universal statement. And as soon as that statement is made, it was so peculiar, so unusual, that his reputation was spread by his friends by word of mouth. This is a very strange person, you know, he thinks like that. And then the next stage was that we can make a pendulum clock to tell time. And so that was followed by 70 years of innovation, technology development. Now this is the link between science and technology. The manufacture of clocks came from that theory. Galileo himself spent the rest of his life trying to invent a clock, but he failed because there are many problems that you prevent the friction from slowing down your pendulum. So you had to keep it driving it. So it took 70 years, but in that process, a whole new technology came into being. And that was the beginning of precision engineering. The science is related to technology development, and to innovation. So from that came this precision engineering, the invention of clocks, which until 50 years ago everybody had in a house, a pendulum clock. One of the most important of all inventions in terms of the universality of utilization. But things went further than that. Because that theory led to the next one, the realization that the swinging of the pendulum is a form of vibration. And every vibration keeps time. And that led to the realization that the quartz crystal could replace a pendulum, because the quartz crystal, when you pass a current through it will vibrate. And that became the basis of your watches. And all the pendular clocks were then replaced by quartz. So that was the next stage in development, in technology development and innovation. But it didn't stop there. It came to the realization that the finer your frequency of your vibration, the smaller the time unit that you can measure. So that led to the invention of the atomic clock. Now, when you have an atomic clock, you can measure distance, time to very high accuracy, and you can use that to measure distance to very high accuracy. So if I stand here and I have a satellite, I beam a message there and the signal up and it comes down, I have the exact time, I know the distance. If I have two satellites, I can fix my position on Earth to the nearest meter. That is the basis of our GPS. So here you see science, how data collecting, which is the basic job of every scientist, and we spend a lot of time collecting data, leads to your analysis, you come to a conclusion, and then the next stage is where you make universal theory. And then your theory, because it's universal, allows you to think ahead. How can I apply this? Now, if our science is at a level where all we do is collect data, analyze it, and say, this is what I find, we are just a data writer, which is what most scientists outside the Western world do. Because we don't think it's our job to make theory. Theory is made by geniuses. I have no idea what is a genius. But when we do that, we limit ourselves, but we don't know that it's just, forcing yourself to think, what I find here, is it applicable worldwide? And you think about it. So as an editor of papers, I keep seeing papers, I think this, that, and then I publish a paper, the behavior of this and that in Ipoh or Mexico, Malaysia, and so on. You just cannot think globally. The next thing I want to deal with is publication, something that's very misunderstood. It's misunderstood partly because of the problem of language. We have a problem with English, and there's no choice when you want to be a scientist. You have to write in English and read in English. Because the problem with knowledge is that you don't have an arbitrator to tell you which to evaluate your knowledge. So what is the system for evaluation? Now Galileo had a big problem, together with an Englishman, who they call the Englishman his co-founder of science. This Englishman was William Harvey. He was working on the human body, anatomy and physiology. He had ideas about the behavior of blood, which changed the whole Western idea of the concept of the body and the way it works. They both had problems. Galileo had problems with the church, and William Harvey had problems with the medical establishment. Because when you have a big establishment, they don't like the ideas being challenged. So they were blocked. And they both independently, although one was in England and one was in Italy, they both independently came to the same conclusion that they had to bypass the authorities and go into publication. They printed so that everybody can read and make their own conclusions. And ever since that time, publication has become the only way in which you can arrive at a consensus of what is a better idea compared to another idea. So if you don't publish, there's no way to evaluate any idea. So publication has become a very important part of science, very unappreciated in countries where, partly because English is very poor, and we have no choice the way it's going. Originally, we had one language of science that was Latin, and then because of the rise of European nationalism, they all split up in French, German, English, and so on. But now all have gone back into one English, which is now, I think, 80 to 90% of all publications. If we don't publish in English, we just get ignored. And we have that problem. Among a few of us, I can say something which I would not normally say, that the Director General of NADI, one of the early ones, announced at the meeting of the Academy of Sciences Malaysia that publication is a waste of time. We are too busy doing research. We don't want to waste time writing papers for white hat professors to read. About the same time, the Rubber Research Institute, trying to explain why Malaysian rubber was falling behind Indonesia and Thailand, said that it's because they are benefiting from the research done by the RRI. So they put an embargo on RRI's research. Anything that may be of use to our competitors will not be published. And the result, we have your friends in agriculture or MADI or RRI, rubber industry, ask them what has happened to those two institutes. So that's the importance of publication. It has become an integral part of science. It's the only way in which you can evaluate things. So science does not have a supreme scientist to declare what is right and what is wrong. The whole body of science takes part in this. The first thing I want to deal with is luck. Now, scientists and the general public doesn't like to talk about luck in science. It's like buying a lottery ticket. But luck has an important role to play in almost every scientific discovery. Let's just take a very simple example of the immunity that you get from COVID-19. The whole business of immunity all came about because of a lucky discovery by Louis Pasteur in France. Now, Louis Pasteur was working on the disease of chickens called chicken cholera, which was threatening to wipe out the chicken industry in France. So he was a chemist, but he was given his job to try and find a cure. So, okay, we got the sick chickens, he took out the body fluid, injected the healthy chickens would get sick and die. So, okay, this is transmitted by the body fluid. And there are microorganisms, a virus doing this. But after that, he couldn't make any progress. And so he took a holiday. When he took a holiday, he had a bottle of this virulent fluid, on his desk. And he went on a long holiday. When he came back, he said, okay, let's start again. We get some chickens. And we took this stuff and we checked them. Nothing happened. The fluid had lost its virulence. So, okay, failed, experiment finished. Started a new batch, took out the fluid from sick chickens, got a batch of healthy chickens, and injected them, and something strange happened. Some of the chickens got the disease and died, but some of them were healthy. And he recognized the healthy ones. These were the ones that he did the last time. He gave this expired fluid, and these chickens had become immune. And that's the whole process of vaccination. Now, he had a couple of strokes of luck. He took a holiday. You wouldn't think that's a piece of luck. He took a holiday. He left a bottle of virulent fluid on his desk, stopped it with cotton wool. When he tried to make more of this virulent fluid, he discovered that if he had closed the top and no oxygen could get in, it would stay virulent. But the fact that it was stopped with cotton wool meant that the oxygen got in and acted on the virus. That was a lucky discovery. And the third thing was that the first batch of chickens that he injected, after he had finished with the experiment, they were kept and mixed up with a new batch, and he recognized the old old batch. So he was hands-on. He did it. He recognized his chickens. So you'll find throughout history of science that these things happen. And the people who are lucky are the ones who are always working, thinking. And luck will benefit all those people. And then he was asked, what's the role of luck in your discoveries? He said, yeah, it's very important, but luck benefits the prepared mind. And so we've got to have scientists who are all the time on the go, trying. And then when you have this, then you get luck. A lot of scientists, when they do experiments, they are very happy if the experiment works. But if the experiment doesn't work, it may also be good. They may discover something they never planned and never thought of. Now, the next thing is observation, experiment, and time. And this is a matter of strategy. Scientists have to be very strategic because we can waste a lot of time doing things that are not very profitable. For example, let's say you want to test a particular treatment on a particular subject to see whether it works. I can work on one specimen, see whether it works. If I get a result that's quite promising, I do a second one. If it works, then I get more confident. I do a third one, it still works. Then I'm on. But most scientists don't do that. They are taught that they must have big samples. You must have 25 samples to test your treatment. You must have another 25 to act as a control. You will treat them. So your experiment, instead of 1 or 2 or 3, has gone up to 50, 100. Think of the time, the space, the cost, and all that. To generate the statistics so that you can have the numbers to play with and calculate averages, standard deviations, and all that. And for a long time, the people who did this kind of work, they were dominant. They say that we can take all the uncertainty out of science by putting in all these mathematical controls. And then, whatever you publish, then you cannot dispute, you must be right. And there was no way to show that this was wrong. Because nobody spends their time repeating other people's experiments. If I repeat and I found it's wrong, I just be quiet. I'm not going to make a noise. I don't want to get sued. Now, then it leaked out that there's one area of science where people have been repeating and testing theories secretly. And this is the pharmaceutical industry. The pharmaceutical industry has been routinely testing all scientific claims with a pharmaceutical potential because they want to capitalize it and do that. And they have been doing it secretly because they don't want to leak information to their rivals. And they don't publish it because they don't want to get sued by people who they say the work doesn't work. Now they discovered that a very high proportion of pharmaceutical papers cannot be repeated. In other words, you cannot believe what is there. You have to check it. So for the first time, all this business about all these big, expensive experiments being something that you need to do has been shown to be basically, you can't believe it. You have to retest it if it's important to you. So these are the things that there are many other examples that are in my book, telling people how they should, be strategic, and take shortcuts, open the way to luck, and so on. So that basically is what this book is about. I'm not trying to say that there's any right or wrong way to do anything. I'm just saying that, look, think about what you're doing, and don't just believe whatever you're told. When the Royal Society in England, the first scientific society, was established, their motto is, I've forgotten what it is in Latin, but it means don't take anything for granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. So luck benefits the prepared mind. That's word of wisdom for today. Right. So next, let's call upon Professor Kay Fletcher, who is the Fellow of Para Academy, to give a book commentary. Over to you, Professor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to have this opportunity to comment on both what's been said now and especially on the book, which I've really enjoyed reading over the last several weeks. I want to start off with where Francis finished. Don't believe what anybody tells you, the Royal Society. That is perhaps the most fundamental thing in science. You have to be able to prove and verify everything. Now, if we go back to Victorian times, think of Darwin working in the Galapagos, think of Wallace working in the Malayan archipelago, same time, but separated by the planet, huge distances, very, very slow communication, and communicating through intermediaries. Lots of time to think things through. The gentlemen, it was mainly gentlemen in those days, no gentlewomen were involved, or very, very few. That fortunately is changing now. But think of them, when they did meet, they probably had tremendous discussions and debates in their clubs. The opportunity to discuss one-on-one was so valuable to them. And I'm sure they argued about it when they got the chance. Now the world has completely changed. Those early scientists, early naturalists, the ideas were their own. They were independent scientists. They weren't working for large organizations. Wallace was employed as a collector, providing specimens around the world to wealthy clients. Darwin was moderately wealthy in his own right and could do things. He had the right connections to get things done. But they didn't really work for organizations. Now the planet has completely changed. Science, it works. It has worked in the past. So there are thousands and thousands of people doing science, usually funded by some organization. The lucky ones are in universities, where they should have a degree of freedom. But if they're working for big industry, the pharma industry for example, or if they're working for government, there is often some kind of agenda involved. They're being directed on where their research should go. I'll mention an example from my own country of Canada. Previous government there didn't like the way lake acidification was going because of aerosols coming across the border from the US. They're simply trying to close the laboratory down. That laboratory had been working for many, many decades. Masses of information. But the easy answer to the politician's problem was, okay, that's inconvenient, defund it. Fortunately, private people came in and it wasn't even an expensive operation. It was able to be funded privately and is still existing today. So there's been a huge change in the nature of science from people who were truly independent scientists, following their own curiosity and ideas, to science being done for a reason, for an agenda. And that makes the independent scientists, the few of them that there are, even more important. Because when you see something in the newspaper, or if you don't see something in the newspaper that perhaps should be there, who is going to make that public? Who is going to try and evaluate it? Generally, the popular press, not just here but also in Canada, is not well adapted to evaluating scientific ideas and theories. you need to have independent scientists who've got the freedom to talk, to say what they think. Ideally, I think you should have groups of those people doing it, because no one independent scientist can cover the vast fields of science today. Many, many disciplines, many, many collaborative efforts. So it's got a whole lot tougher, and in the last few years it's got even tougher still. One of the media for doing this evaluation used to be the peer-reviewed papers in well-established journals. Mainly it's true in the West. But anybody could write to those journals, providing, of course, communication was possible. That can be a stumbling block. But because of pressure now on junior faculty in universities to publish, we have what are politely called grade journals. I call them trash journals. They basically exist to publish papers which don't get properly peer-reviewed. And this is a real challenge from both ends of the spectrum. How do you get the junior scientists who need to move through their career to publish in internationally respected peer-reviewed journals and not succumb to the pressure of publishing in these journals which just publish for the sake of publishing and making money? It's a real challenge. In a way, the problem has been counteracted by social media, the internet. It's extremely easy now for me to follow up on a topic like the snails in Kelantan, which happen to interest me at the moment. The snails in Kelantan and Trengganu, the distribution. I can go into ResearchGate, I can search through the peer-reviewed journals, I can find what I want. But it doesn't really solve the problem, because at the other end of the spectrum, social media has become an absolute nightmare. Somebody can have one idea which perhaps requires verification and substantiation, but it rapidly gets accepted and spreads like wildfire, even if it hasn't gone through that process. And that's why I think over COVID and over some environmental issues, we see all kinds of conspiracy theories flourishing. All kinds of way out ideas that have not been properly evaluated. And again, that's why I think now, even more than in the past, the independent-minded scientist is vitally important. And this book by Francis, really shines a spotlight on those problems and how they can perhaps be addressed. And helps those young students, those graduate students and young scientists, perhaps develop the right attitude of skepticism. I would like to conclude by saying more or less the same as Francis did in his conclusion. Please don't believe anything I've just said. You have to check it out for yourself, verify it. You don't have to go into those old dusty libraries anymore. In the old days, I'd wander through the stacks at the University of British Columbia, going through old journals, looking through card indexes. Now you can do a really quick search on the internet and pull out the better peer-reviewed journals. And if you're in an organization, you've probably got free access to it. So that's absolutely essential. And if you do that, you can become the independent-minded scientist at any stage of your career. You can look into things, investigate. So thank you very much, Francis, for putting this book together. I really enjoyed reading it. I hope all scientists will get a chance to read it, all junior scientists especially. So thank you very much for putting that together. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Professor Fletcher. Now we will move on to the highlight of this evening. Can I call upon the Honorable Mr. Chang Lee Kang to say a few words and also to launch the book entitled A Guide for Independent-Minded Scientists. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank Thank you, Ruby. Dr. Adi Winston Tung, Chairman of Para Academy. Mr. Chan Kok Kiong, Deputy Chairman. Author of the book, Dr. Francis Ng, Professor Fletcher, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening. First of all, I would like to extend my heartiest apology for the late arrival because I was stuck in a jam. I started my journey before 12 o'clock from Alostar, but unfortunately it took me 4.5 hours to reach Ipoh. And today I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me. And I'm really thinking about changing my slogan after listening to Kok Kiong's speech. From reformasi to another slogan, starting with R and with I. Research and innovasi. Okay, since this is a book related to scientists, I would like to begin with a story, my own story, with scientists in my ministry, mostly Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation. So when I was first appointed, I entered the office, I asked, okay, in fact, I asked my officer, actually, what is this mostly about? What scope does it cover? Then my officer said, oh, in fact, you can say it's basically everything under the sun. Something as big as the universe to something as small as nanoparticle. Then I said, oh, okay. By the way, my next question. By the way, what is nanoparticle? It shows how ignorant I was. But yeah, that is my first encounter with scientists. Then after that, I have a lot of opportunity to deal with scientists, because in my post-cabinet meeting, most of the members, they are either scientists, academics, or government servant with strong science background, with a PhD in science in their respective area. So I have a lot of dealing with them. But to be very frank, most of the time I don't understand them. I don't understand what they are talking. Then I have to instruct them, please speak English. Then, sir, I'm speaking English. So I say, sir, I still don't understand you. That is my problem. Yeah, having said that, I'm still very happy and very honored to be here to launch a book by a very prestigious botanist and also a very prominent government servant. Dr. Francis was a government servant, deputy DG for FRIM, and in fact, I'm very amazed with Dr. Francis' knowledge, very knowledgeable. When I thought of botanists, I think Dr. Francis would elaborate on trees, plants, flowers, but as you see just now, Dr. Francis was talking about pathology, microbiology, anatomy, quantum physics. So very, very knowledgeable, and I'm truly amazed. And to be frank, I flipped through the book. It was a very tough read for me. Although I have an engineering background, but all the while I'm an outsider of the science community. So I flipped through the book. Some of it I agree, most of it I don't understand. But it's very normal. If I understand everything, that means something is wrong for my standard. Okay, but I'm very interested in what Dr. Francis mentioned in the book, especially in promoting strategic thinking among scientists. To be frank, it's an eye-opener for me, because I didn't know, before reading the book, I didn't know strategic planning is also important for scientists. I didn't know scientists needs to be very calculative in terms of saving cost and time. I didn't know a lot of these things. So So this is an eye-opener to me, and I think although I am a follower of Mariana Mazzucato, she talks about innovation. Unfortunately, she's an economist. She believes that government has a big role to play in determining the scientific direction of the country. And I'm sort of a follower, but I also think that individual scientists has very important role to play, and especially in this we call a social media era, where everybody can put up something in social media and act like a scientist, pretend like a very learned scientist. So I think individual scientist has a very important role to play in terms of advancing scientific agenda too. Therefore, I would recommend all the existing scientists and also the future scientists or junior scientists to read this book of Dr. Francis, to at least equip yourself with what was mentioned in the book, like strategic thinking. Before this, I have no idea what is there to do with strategic thinking and research. After reading this book, I have at least an idea, a rough idea of what is it. So I'm very sure, this with Dr. Francis' abundant experience can give us very good guidance, not only to the science community, but also to parents or teachers who are going to teach or inspire our future scientists in the country. With this, I will officially launch the book of Dr. Francis, a guide for independent-minded scientists. Thank you.
Thank you, YB. Well, next, can we call upon Dr. Francis to present his book to the Honorable Mr. Chan. Move to the side so that we can also take a photo of the alright. Yes, thank you. Right. Thank you, Dr. Francis. Can you remain on stage for a while, YB? No over yet. There's no over yet, YB. No over yet. Alright, next, there's more tokens for you, YB. YB, can I now call upon Puan Nursiha Ayu from FRIM to also present the token to the Honorable Minister. Sorry, YB, still there's something else. Wow, a lot of tokens today. Alright, right. Okay, one final thing, YB, just for you. Okay, now I'd like to invite your berbahagia Encik Raymond Tan to present Another token of appreciation for YB and Chang Lee Kang. Thank you. I think frankly everything has been given. Thank you, YB. Can we come forward? Perhaps yes, to take a photo. Group photo. Thank you, YB, for coming to our event. Thank you, everyone, also for coming for our event. We would also want to record our thanks to Mr. Peter Chan for allowing us to use this very nice hall. So our meeting has officially ended. Is there anything else, Mr. Chan? Of course. Of course. Let's adjourn for tea. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And also, there will be books. This particular book will also be on sale outside. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.